Natalie, and this is my channel, Nani Knits and Reads. This is where I'll be talking to you about my knitting and reading journey. I have been into knitting and reading for the past 4 to 5 years. I've always read books growing up, but I've gotten deeper into that hobby and been reading a lot more in the past 4 or 5 years, and I also picked up knitting during that time, and I've made a couple projects that I'm really excited about as well. So this is kind of a record of what I've been doing and what I want to do, so I can look back on it and also share with people who have those hobbies in common. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I live in Michigan. I get a lot of creative inspiration from the area around me. We are surrounded by 5 Great Lakes, and I like to check out lighthouses and go to the pier and walk, and it's just a peaceful place for me. And I also like to go for walks in the woods and hikes and things like that. So one of the things that I wanted to do with this project is to design my own knitwear, and this is kind of where I wanted to just have there be a face behind the design of that, and then like share what my process is for designing it, and to share what my inspiration is and share those designs, and hopefully to have other people make those designs. So that is my goal behind that portion. I live with my husband, and we have a little 3-year-old girl, and currently I'm not working, so I have a lot of time to finally be able to do something creative, which I've wanted to do for a really long time. I had a career in sales before this that I was not happy in, and finally getting out of that and figuring out like what is really important to me has been a big part of what's driven me to this creative effort. My knitting journey basically started during quarantine, and I think that kind of was a common theme I've come to see, where people were slowing down and kind of getting back into creative things when they were at home and didn't have other outlets. So I started crocheting, and I made my daughter a blanket, and I kind of fell in love with that, and then through that discovered knitting and really fell in love with all of the amazing different yarns that you can use, the different patterns, the different colors. There's just endless creativity behind that. And that's what I love about knitting. I love any kind of art where you can just have an endless amount of inspiration. And I like to fixate on that and get really excited about it. I have stayed interested in knitting, and I wanted to celebrate that. And for reading, like I said, I read when I was younger, but started going into BookTube and like seeing what other people were reading, and that inspired me to read a lot. And I found that that journey like really helped me to start making lists of what I want to read and collecting books. And I've gotten so much joy out of that in the past 4 years that I love talking about books. I have a couple of book clubs that I'm in with friends and family, and I like discovering new stories. And what I read is kind of eclectic, I would say. Like, I like to read some classics, I like to read some literary fiction, I like to read some mysteries, and for me it's more like the tone of the book that I get really sucked into. That can be really eclectic because I think it kind of depends on the voice of the author for me. So yeah, I have an Instagram if you want to check that out as well. And I thought, you'll get to know me a little bit more through these videos, I hope. So please like and subscribe to them so you won't miss out on any of the knitting or reading projects. And I'm going to just go in and start talking to you about my knitting first, and then we'll go on to reading. So the first thing I want to show you is the latest sweater that I completed. I'm going to do a full video on the side so that you can see full sweater, but this is it right here. It's a little bit wrinkly because I've had it folded, but this is the Versal sweater, and it's by Albiona McLaughlin. And I think it's Albiona, it might be Albiona, but she has an Instagram that I'll link below. And yeah, so like the camera is a little bit fuzzy on here, and I'm trying to figure out how to fix that, so bear with me. But Let me put this on, and then I'll also do a video where you can see the whole thing. So I was first interested in this sweater from another knitting podcast that I watch called Knitting Traditions, with Inga, and I watched that one quite a lot. And she made this sweater. I think it was in like a grayish, I think she made it in like a grayish, but she made this sweater. It was a different yarn, and it was a different fit too, I think. But I just thought that it was really a good pattern from the way that she described it, and I got really interested in that because she was talking about the sweater's name is the Versal, and I think that probably comes from versatility because there's a lot of modifications that you can do with this particular sweater, and you can do the sleeves differently so that they go in or they're tapered or else they're a full sleeve. You can do different modifications with the neck so that the neck comes a little bit higher or it's a crew neck. I think there's 3 or 4 different options, and you can do the same thing with the hem at the bottom. So it's kind of like a basic sweater. The shoulder on the sweater always kind of signifies the kind of construction that it is, and I hadn't done this construction yet, but it's called a saddle shoulder, and I'll see if I can get a good angle of it, but I'll also attach a picture. I don't know why this camera is so blurry, but yeah. So watching Inga make this, watching her make this kind of inspired me to make it, just because I liked the fact that you could modify it in different ways, and there's always something kind of nice about when you go and you see a knitting pattern and there's multiple things within that pattern, and I think that that's really an amazing thing that a creator can do, where they give you different options within a pattern. And so I will probably make this again. I think maybe I could make it in different colors or with different yarns, or I could make it with the different modifications for like the higher neck or even wider sleeves. I picked the straight sleeve, so it kind of just goes like straight across, and I liked that quite a bit because I didn't really like sometimes when I make the sweaters and it cuts the sleeve in like that. Sometimes that looks good, but a lot of times there's like this little poof that happens here around the edges, and I like it just being straight because I find that if you do the ribbing, it kind of like goes in naturally as well. So I feel like I got the fit very well in this sweater, and that makes me really happy because that's one of the things that I had struggled with the most when I first learned knitting, is getting it to fit right. And that's because, you know, you have to figure out the whole gauge thing, and even if you're making a pattern with the exact same yarn as a different artist or the exact same needle, you might get a different gauge than them just based on your style of knitting, whether you knit loosely or tighter. So I don't know if I knit tightly or loosely. I still have not been able to figure out exactly what that means because there's so many different patterns that I've used. So some of them I knit tighter than that person and some I knit looser. So I still haven't quite figured that part out yet, but I've been able to get really close to gauge. If you really pay attention to it, just take a few minutes to really like say, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to figure this out, and then do the pattern, which can be kind of hard for me because I have a hard time not just jumping into something right away. I have little patience, and I really like just starting knitting, getting my fingers going. So I'm trying harder to just take a step back and make sure I get the right size, and I'll be really happy with the end result, which I am with this sweater quite a bit. Really excited to wear this in the fall, and I really like the yarn that I picked as well, although it is discontinued now, unfortunately, but it's called Berroco, and this is a brand that they sell at my local yarn shop.
and they still have other Berroco yarns, but this one in particular, the type was called Vento, Vento, and they discontinued that line. But I got half of the yarn for the sweater, and then I had to get the rest online. So I know that there's still a few out there that you can get if you really are interested in this yarn. I think it's like a DK weight, which I really liked for this pattern because it gives me a little bit more of like a flow to the garment. There's the worsted weight, which is a little bit thicker of a yarn, and then you get more of like a little bit of a stiffer garment sometimes. And then I've made a fingering weight sweater, which I'm going to show you next, and that is even a thinner yarn, which gives you the nice drape, but it also takes a really long time to knit. So I feel like the DK weight is where I've been happiest with garments, and maybe worsted DK. Although I wouldn't say no to doing another fingering weight sweater. There's a big commitment to that, and there's so many things that I want to knit that I just don't know if I want to invest the time right now into that. This is Bingo. She is kind of newer to our family. Hi, Bingo. But she's the sweetest girl. And we had a dog who unfortunately passed away when he was 11 this February. And his name was Zeus. And, you know, he was such an important part of our lives for so long. And we had another dog that was his brother that passed away a couple years before that. So we had an empty house, and not having a dog around was super hard. And I was just like, we'll just go to the Humane Society. We'll just look. And we didn't just look. We got we got Bingo. My daughter named her. She just named everything Bingo for a really long time. So yeah, I think, you know, like I said, she's super sweet. She's part boxer for sure, but she does have this like curly tail. And since I haven't been working, she's been keeping me company all day, and she's really kind of my dog, like really bonded to me, and we have a good time together going on lots of walks. She did eat one of my books when we first got her, one of the covers of my books. So we can talk about that because that's one that I recently read. Anyway, from that segue, I just really am happy with this kind of basic sweater. I want to make more. I'd like to make different things though. Like I had a list of where I wanted to make a color work sweater. I wanted to make a cable knit sweater, and I've made those two, which I'll show you next, and a cardigan. And the cardigan that I made is a little bit more like of a worse bulky weight, so I want to make one that's more of like a DK weight too, because I like a thinner cardigan. I don't like things too baggy. I like them to have a little bit of just a normal fit for sweaters, not too tight, not too baggy. And I feel like this bulky weight cardigan can look a little bit like much when I put it on, so I kind of want to do one that's a little bit thinner yarn coming up. So yeah, the Versal Albiona or Albiona McLaughlin, her Instagram is beautiful. She has she has just really stunning photography on it with all these earth tones, and she's featured in her photos, so I would go check her out. She's amazing. So the Versal, I would say that's a pretty intermediate maybe sweater. If you just started making sweaters, I would make more of like a basic raglan. I just go on Ravelry. It's the app where you can find patterns for all kinds of like sewing, knitting, fiber art, you know, patterns on there, and then you can make something if you buy them. They're usually like $5-ish range of things. Even the sweater's like $6 or $7, and then you own that pattern and you get to make it again and again if you want to. So that is, like I said, what I liked about this pattern is that you get to try different versions of it, and it's a good one for intermediate, because you get to practice with modifications, and that's one of the big reasons that I chose this one. So okay, so the second pattern that I want to show you is that color work sweater that I worked on, which also happens to be a fingering weight sweater, so that very thinner kind of yarn. And the creator, I'm gonna butcher this name,
too, I think, but it's Ranja Kalenko. I'll link her below. And she makes a lot of the same kind of like earth tone, rustic sort of colorwork sweaters, and it's just kind of like a basic sweater design and then colorwork yoke. And she has a bunch of different kind of variations on this. So her Instagram is also very beautiful. And I chose this one of hers called the Kilpie Sweater. And I just changed the coloring a little bit because it's in her pattern it's black on the bottom and then inside is black. But I really wanted a deep like chocolate brown sweater, so I chose that instead. And then this one was more of like a grayish brown that I chose this like orangish colored yarn, and then I just kept the cream the same. But it was really fun doing the yoke with the color work, and it was also interesting to learn how to do increases and decreases with that because it's the first color work sweater that I've made and the first one that I've practiced like the increases and decreases. So the only thing I have with this sweater is that I think I did get the gauge wrong with this one, and it's a little bit smaller than I wanted it to be. I also didn't realize that when you have different needle sizes, you have to go a different needle size for the yoke, because in color work it's tighter. Like if you look on the inside, it doesn't do the same thing as this regular knit. So if you do stretch this, it's very stretchy, but the color work itself only has a limit to how far it can stretch. So that's why you have to change needles, and I was just lazy and I didn't have the right size needle, so I was like, I'll just use the same needle. It's only like a couple millimeters difference, but it did make a difference. And then yeah, I kind of just went a gauge too small because the first sweater that I had made was way too big on me, so I overcompensated with this one and I got a sweater that's way too small. So making the Versal, the one before, I think that has helped me realize like, oh, okay, like I know what gauge I need to be in now. And that's kind of what it takes, is just I learn a lot by experience, and so now I kind of know what gauge that I want to be at. So I'm gonna try this one on for you too. And I didn't fold down the neck yet on this one because honestly I'm not sure what that would look like because of the needle that I used. When I fold it down manually it looks pretty good, so I might leave it at that. But the sweater's a beautiful pattern. I wish I would have done a different gauge with it, but I still think that the pattern is so pretty that it still looks good. And right, and I do have it kind of up here, but what I do is I kind of like tuck it in here, and like you can kind of see it's a little tight around the shoulders because of what I did with the gauge, but it's still really a striking sweater. Like I can't wait to wear this in the fall, drinking coffee and going to a cafe. It's just like something that I'm really proud of having accomplished. The pattern is different, and the pattern has a lot of different variations, but also is really symmetrical. And I like that bottom part too with the different dots. So it was really fun to get lost in the color work of this pattern. I'll show you the full length with this one as well, but as you can see, it's like pretty tight. I would like this one to be a little bit baggier, but I think I'm gonna make another one of her patterns again just to kind of make kind of do it justice. But I don't know if I want to do a fingering sweater again so soon, but I might not be able to help myself. So so that's that one. And for the yarn I used, what did I use? Blue Sky Fiber, like a chocolate color of the Blue Sky Fiber, which is a really nice, like a worsted woolen spun yarn. So it's kind of fluffy. It doesn't have like a lot of definition to it. So when you put it on, it gives you more of that like rustic fluffy look. But then I did combine that with a yarn that wasn't woolen spun. It was the other kind, I think worsted spun, and that does have definition. So I would kind of pick the same type of yarn next time so that it would look more like the same texture, but it's not really that much of a difference. But I think I would just do that next time. And this one was a color that I just really loved, the orange color. I think it was called Oh My Gourd, and something about gourds, and it was by Emma's Yarn, which is another one that my local yarn shop sells. I haven't seen it anywhere else. It's kind of on the pricier side, but if you're doing like a yoke, then you don't need that much. So I think I just use like one skein for that one. Yeah, so, and then I have one other cardigan that I want to show you that I finished recently. This was my first cardigan that I made, and it's right here. Again, it might be a little fuzzy, so bear with me while I figure that out. But this is the Novice Cardigan Chunky Edition by Petite Knit, and I just chose these cute little buttons from my local yarn shop, and it was my first time putting on buttons, my first time making a cardigan with this button band, and it was my first time using mohair and yarn together. And this yarn is like an alpaca, worsted weight alpaca, and then I used Tynn silk mohair to combine, and it made like a bulky weight yarn. There's a nice, I don't know if you can see it, but it's like a nice like fuzziness to it. It's a little bit itchy for me, but it's not really a big deal. I just wear like a long sleeve shirt underneath it, and I love the color. It's like this nice stormy gray color. It was charcoal color, and then the Tynn silk mohair was like the same match kind of gray. And like I said, it's like a bulky, so I'll show you this one. This is a little bit on the bulkier side, and I like that with a cardigan. Like I said, I just feel like maybe it's because I'm a millennial, but I don't really like the super bulky clothes. Although I think it can look like really good depending on how you do it. But this Petite Knit, she's super well known. She's a very prolific designer, and she makes this in other editions too, so I think I'll try like the thinner one. I've tried a couple of her patterns, and they're pretty easy to follow. I think there's like a language barrier sometimes, so I'm not sure where she's from, but maybe Norwegian or Finnish, but the patterns are usually fairly easy to follow. This was the Novice cardigan. It went really fast because it was the bulkier weight, and it was easy holding the mohair and the alpaca yarn together. I do feel like this has that sleeve that I was talking about where it bunches up, which isn't really something that I love. I think I'd rather have the sleeve go in a little bit at the bottom. Although the rest of the sweater I think is great, but you can wear it open or you can wear it buttoned, and I like it both ways. I finished all these kind of when winter was like ending, so I didn't get to wear a lot of them, so I'm really excited to wear them in the fall. Yeah, and I don't know if anyone else has issues with alpaca, or if it's the mohair, because I know some people can be sensitive to mohair too. So I would be curious. I don't feel like I have very sensitive skin, but this one just kind of like you can feel these little things like poking at you, and it's not the best feeling. But the other two sweaters I didn't have an issue with. Those are merino wool. I wanted to show you a sweater that I made for my husband next. Okay, so hold on just a second. I wanted to make a cable knit sweater. My husband had been asking me to make him something for a long time, and so I decided, wait, hold on, I gotta show you. This is our other pal that's gonna be joining us, Waffles. She doesn't look happy, but she's a very sweet girl too. Aren't you a sweet girl? Are you sweet? You are sweet. Her and Bingo get along really good. Well, here comes Bingo.
Hello. You were so sweet, my little orange girls. She's just the best tempered cat. I think she's also like 14 years old, so she's getting up there, but she likes to just sit on my lap while if I sit for too long, she's up there. So, but anyway, cable knit sweater for my husband, and it was by Drops Design, and so I got a Drops yarn to go with that. It was kind of the only one that I went online to get besides the extra discontinued yarn that I got for the Versal. This is like the only other time I've gone online because I like to go to the local yarn shops. Like if you're just picking up knitting and you want to really get into that world, there's usually a local yarn shop hidden somewhere in your town, and it has the friendliest people, and just like a lot of times there's a group of probably women that are sitting around a table, and they have where you can just walk in and knit with other people. They have events throughout the year, yarn hops where you can go to different yarn stores, and patterns and advice. They have somebody there that can give you advice. And every time I go to my local yarn shop, they're always like, "What are you making?" And we get into that whole thing. So I really love the community with that as well. It's another thing that's amazing about the knitting world. So yeah, highly recommend finding your local yarn shop. It usually has like a punny name or something like that. Great people, I think, are in yarn, like work in yarn shops, and they don't make any money, so try to support them if you can. So this one I did get the yarn online because I wanted to use the same yarn that was used for the project, and it's called Sailor's Knots by Drops Design, and they use Drops soft tweed yarn, which it is a really soft yarn. It's made from merino wool, alpaca, and viscose. They did this pattern in, I'll show a picture of it, but they did this pattern in like a blue color, and he wanted like a neutral kind of cream color, and I wanted to learn how to make cables. So I did one swatch making a cable, and then I made a whole sweater, which I don't really recommend. I would do maybe a couple other cable projects before you commit to a whole sweater. So here it is right here. The front is all cables, and the back is seed stitch. And the way this is constructed is something that I hadn't done either, which normally I'll do like from the top down, and this was made bottom up, and it was made in panels. So you would start with the back panel and you do the seed stitch, which is really fun stitch to do, and then you switch to the front and you go back and forth making the cables. Why I said maybe you want to do a couple cable projects first is there is some sloppiness to this, and I've seen other people mention this as well, but there's like this little kind of gap here where the cables bend to that side, and it doesn't happen in the other direction of the cables. It doesn't happen in the other side, but it does happen on that side. So I know you can change the direction of the cables, but that was a little advanced for me. But I really liked trying a different construction, doing from bottom up, which a lot of people say that bottom up knitting is harder because it's harder to get the gauge right. But then books that I've gotten about knitting traditionally are this type of sweater where it's like bottom up in panels, and they say that that's easier to get the gauge right. So people say it different ways. I don't think one is necessarily better than the other in my experience so far, but I would say just try different constructions because that's part of the fun, and you can find out what you really like experimenting in that way. So then after you do the back and the front of this one, you do the sleeves separately, and then you attach the sleeves, attach the back and the front by this seam, which is pretty much really hard to see. Oh no, there's a little hole in here. Oh well. But I could fix that. Then you add the collar on after. And the collar, they also suggest that you do an elastic band. I thought that was kind of neat because it keeps the collar from like naturally bowing out like that sometimes. So
it's just like right here, and it's really stretchy and really nice to have that on the collar. So yeah, this was the Drops Sailor's Knot, and I'll show a picture of Chris wearing this, but he loved it and he got a lot of compliments on it at work. A lot of times I get really like shy showing stuff that I've made, so I was a little like, don't wear it to work, but I'm kind of just trying to embrace that. So that's this one. And I do have just a couple that I want to share that I'm currently working on, and then I'm gonna just wrap up the knitting part, and I have to go to a therapy appointment, and then will come back and do the reading. So this one I'm so excited about. I'm going to take this off because it's getting kind of hot and itchy. It's almost July. Okay. This one I am so excited about, and I know I can show that it's supposed to be a surprise, but I know I can show it because my friend isn't really online and doesn't know that I'm doing this channel. And by the time I probably put it up, I might honestly have already given it to her. So like I mentioned, I have a daughter. She's 3, and she has a best friend in her school that she goes with sometimes. She's in 3K right before preschool, so she has another 3-year-old friend, and they'll be going into the 4K preschool this year. And I'm gonna make them both matching sweaters to wear to the first day of preschool. So that's the plan. It might be too hot, I don't know. And I found a pattern that I really liked, and it's by Sandnes Garn, and I can't remember the name of it, and I have it downstairs somewhere, but I will link that below as well. It's just a raglan sweater for a range of kid sizes, and I chose 6 years old because I think they had a 2, 4, and a 6. And I just picked 6 because they're pretty much going to be 4 soon. And I just wanted them to be able to wear it for a couple of years. Their favorite colors are like pink and blue. And they had these really pretty baby blanket yarns that were really soft. And I don't know if they are going to be too soft for wearing a sweater with, because they might like fray. But I figured that this is not going to be something that they're going to wear all the time, maybe a couple times. And then it didn't take that long to knit. It probably took like a couple weeks to do each one. I'm almost done with the second one, but anyway, here it is. It's so cute. It's so cute. Yeah, the yarn was called Cherish, and I'll link that one. But yeah, it's just a raglan right here, and then I did a different color for the collar and the size 6. The thing that was different with this one that I really loved doing was the bind off at the end of the sleeves and at the end here of the bottom. So I did what they call the Italian bind off, and normally you would just, when you are done, you do like a bind off in the same, like I did ribbing right here, so I would do a bind off in ribbing. But this one is more of like a sewn bind off, and it's kind of fun and like meditative to do. If you're doing it on the bottom, it can take kind of a long time. So yeah, but I think it's really worth it because I have never had like this finished of a look. I don't know how well you can see it, but it's just a really finished professional kind of look, and then really stretchy too, but it goes right back, and it just looks kind of like, I don't want to say store-bought, but like more professional, smoother look. Like it naturally looks like the ribbon goes all the way around. So I loved that, and I'm definitely going to incorporate that into like every other sweater that I try to do. But I do like to try new things, so I'm maybe not. But this is so cute. And then so what I'm going to do is I'm making like the opposite of this for her friend, and that's, I just finished the bottom this morning. So that's this one right here. I still have to just do the sleeves on this one, but I finished that with the Italian bind off, and it was just a self-patterning yarn, and you can see like some of it isn't along like the right pattern or just doesn't conform to the rest, but I don't really think that that matters. I think it's really cute, and it would be really hard to make that work throughout with increases and decreases and stuff. And also like on the front, so I'm going to do the pink collar on top here, and then in pink yarn I'm going to write my daughter's friend's name across this part, so that'll kind of like cover any kind of discrepancy there. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my daughter, put my daughter's name in the blue purplish yarn right here. But yeah, it didn't take that long to knit, just a little raglan. Kind of got tedious making the second one, but I think that it's worth it when I get to see them wearing them together. It's going to be like the cutest thing in the whole world, so I'm really excited. The last thing I'm going to show you before I hop off for a minute is my own design that I'm working on. So when it came to making my own designs, I at first wanted to start with this garment that I had in mind that was actually, I like having kind of a theme behind my work, and I wanted it to be like something for when you're out on the lake, maybe in the winter time, maybe ice skating, which we do kind of quite a lot here. And it was going to be like kind of like a sweater vest or like a pullover without the sleeves, and I was going to do like kind of a two-tone thing with the top being a certain stitch pattern and then the bottom being a different stitch pattern in like a darker color. But when I started making that, I wasn't getting the gauge right with it, and I thought if I want to make my own design, I should probably start with like an accessory or something like that. But I still wanted to go with the same theme where it's by the water, and I've just been really inspired by lighthouses lately. Found out that Michigan has more lighthouses than any other state, and so I want to go and see if I can see all of them at some point. I know that would be really hard to do, especially because there's some that are on an island that is hard to get to, but it's just kind of fun to check them off the list as you go. So that was kind of my inspiration for this, was like the lighthouse. It's funny because when I make these patterns, I've made a lot of like earth tones and stuff, but I've always been drawn to like primary colors for art because I really love how playful they are and how classic they are, and that they're not neutral when in a world that feels like everything's kind of neutral. But yeah, so just really quick show you, but I made this bandana scarf. So this is it right here. And just a classic stripe pattern, and it's double folded. So what I did was it's made with the fingering weight yarn, and it's a garter stitch, which I really love the texture of the garter stitch. And this deep red was also really beautiful, I thought. And I used that same yarn that I used for my colorwork sweater, so that Blue Sky Fibers woolen spun yarn. So it's a little bit fuzzy, especially as much as I've been handling it. But originally I wanted something that you can wear kind of like this, and like a triangle in the back. And I'll show myself wearing that. But I like how the pattern is just one way. But if you wear it just this way, you can really see a different pattern on each side, and I thought that was kind of cool. And then if you don't like that and you like bandanas, you can wear it like this. It's kind of like folded like a bandana. It doesn't go with this outfit, but you kind of get the idea. And then you can also wear it like on the head like a bandana. So there's a couple different ways that you can wear it, and it's just like a triangle shape. I started with 3 stitches, and then on the back I did that like 3 rows of that, and then on the back side I did an increase on each side of the middle stitch, and then I went up by stripes and by each stripe, and then I kept doing increases on the back side. And then I kind of just did that to see what would happen with the increases originally. And I found that they were going like a different direction, and that I could actually like fold that in together. So that was really fun, like little discovery. And then it really makes for like a plush fabric. It stays more steadily in one place. It doesn't flop around at all, even though it's made with the fingering weight yarn. So that gives it the beauty of the fingering weight yarn texture, and then it gives you the steadiness of like the more bulky weight yarn. And it also gives you a little bit more warmth, because if you're out on the water, you might notice that there's a ton of wind, the lake effect, and you get really chilly, and this would really help with that extra layer of warmth. So I'm basically almost done with it. I haven't written a pattern yet though, but I really want to write the pattern. I think I could write the pattern. I might just get a tech editor because it's my first pattern. I might not need one, I'm not sure yet. So I'd like to put this on Ravelry next month sometime. The only thing I'm trying to figure out, I got these really cute buttons. They're from Holland Hoof Farm, and if you know the knitter Andrea Mowry, she has been talking about these guys quite a bit because they have all these really cool ceramic buttons that they make, and they have an online store as well. So I was looking for this type of button, like the longer type, and I really liked this one there, and they actually sent me, they were out of the button that I wanted, and they sent me this one, and then they sent me 2 extra ones, so it was really nice of them, and then they refunded me all the money, so that was really, they're really nice how they did that. So but it's just the placement of the button that I'm having a little trouble with, because I want to make it so it's kind of like this, but I'm struggling to figure out how to do that. I haven't spent too much time on it, but I need to figure that part out so it lays flat like that. I think I'm gonna call it To the Lighthouse, and then the designs that I'm making are gonna be basically like this with the primary colors, and then have kind of like the lake or water theme to them, like the vintagey, maybe sailor type of look is what I'm currently into and inspired by. So those are all my knitting projects that and I won't probably have close to this many the next time. My plan is to kind of do this every month at least, and this is the kind of the buildup of several months, so I'll probably have like 1 or 2, I'll probably have like 2 or 3, 2 to 4 finished objects to show you, and just hopefully you'll stay tuned and see where the works in progress and go, and then what I kind of do next. I have to hop off to a meeting, and then I will be right back to talk to you about what I have been reading. So hi, I'm back. There was an issue with the audio when I recorded the book version earlier, and so I just decided to do this a couple days later and start over again. And I edited the first half of the video. I'm going to see if in the future it makes more sense to do it where it's just the knitting on one half and the reading on the other half. But if anyone's watching this, let me know what you prefer, and I'll try to accommodate for that in the future. But this video is going to do both. And it's a great day to record because I got some book mail today from Thrift Books, and there's a couple packages. There's 4 books in total, and these books I ordered specifically for Summerween, which is something to celebrate spooky time in the summer. So I thought something unique that I could bring to BookTube is that I like ghost stories quite a lot, and I also like fairy tales, and so these are all in that vein. I'm really excited to share them with you, and I'm gonna share these at the end of the video. So the first book that I want to talk to you about is The Picture of Dorian Gray. I just finished this book, and this edition was gifted to me. It's one of the Barnes & Noble Classic editions, and it has the gold lettering, which I like how that stands out on the shelf. I have a few other classics with that on them. There's a quote on the back from the book that says, "If it were I who was to be always young, and the picture that was to grow old, for that, I would give everything." I think most people know this story, or at least have an idea of what this story is about, and I was a little intimidated because there are so many positive reviews about this book that I wasn't sure if it would live up to the hype, but for me, it definitely did. It's written in 1890, which is at the tail end of the Victorian era, and that during that time, there was a big movement for aestheticism. And aestheticism is where beauty was valued maybe over moral or societal implications. They really addressed that in this book, and I think it's important to understand that going in, because there's so much to that ideal referenced in this book, And Dorian Gray, being the main character, he just became part of this upper class society, and people are very interested in him. He's hanging out with these two men, and they both have their own reasons for playing into his vanity. One of them's an artist named Basil, and he loves Dorian Gray's beauty. He's a very beautiful young man in the flower of his youth, and Basil, as somebody who appreciates great beauty as a painter, really worships Dorian Gray and lets him know that and puts that passion into the portrait that he's painting of Dorian. And there's some homoerotic undertones with this. There's definitely a lot of them in the book, but it's not as explicitly stated. And Oscar Wilde is well known for being homosexual, and he was persecuted for this in his time. So it's interesting to see in this day and age how you can pick that out, and I wonder if it was similar for the people of the time, how obvious that it is. But his other friend, Lord Henry, he is one of those aestheticists, which is a really hard word to say. He's one of those people that upholds beauty over morality, but it's interesting because it's later kind of shown that he doesn't even go that far, and he's actually maybe talking more than he lives. But Dorian is young and impressionable, so he falls into this really hard. And I think that kind of represents the downfall of aestheticism and what it means to worship beauty at all costs. That is what most people know of this book, and I about knew that much as well. I knew that this was about Dorian making a wish that he would stay young and the picture would grow old, so the picture grows old and ugly while Dorian stays young and beautiful. One of the most interesting elements for me of this book is that it's not only that Dorian gets older, so the photo grows older and uglier, but the portrait also records his soul. And Dorian begins to prize his beauty so much, and vanity and the beautiful things like theater and art, and gets really into these little hobbies that are all about materialistic things, that he values all of that so much that he becomes cold and uncaring. And that is shown in the relationships in his life. And not only that, but he just goes downhill more and more by ignoring morality, because he doesn't really have to pay attention to that, because the world is his oyster. Another reason that I loved it is the writing style. Like I mentioned before, I get a lot out of the voice of the author, and Oscar Wilde's writing style flows so beautifully, and he describes things so romantically, whether it's a sunset or a conversation between friends. He can do both. He can do beautiful descriptions of scenery, and he can do amazing dialogue that's witty and sharp and funny, and that comes through 150 years later, and it's just beautiful. I highlighted a ton of this book because almost every page had a beautiful quotation. Just opening to one here, and it says, "Nowadays, most people die of a sort of creeping common sense and discover when it is too late that the only things one never regrets are one's mistakes." There's just so many beautiful passages in here. One of my favorites was actually toward the beginning, talking about genius, and it says, "This accounts for the fact that we all take such pains to overeducate ourselves. In the wild struggle for existence, we want to have something that endures, and so we fill our minds with rubbish and facts in the silly hope of keeping our place. The thoroughly well-informed man, that is, the modern ideal, and the mind of the thoroughly well-informed man is a dreadful thing. It is like a bric-a-brac shop, all monsters and dust, with everything priced above its proper value." To me, that line is as beautiful as the famous "tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow" line from Shakespeare, all monsters and dust. It's just so poetic, and that's this whole book. From beginning to end, I really enjoyed every piece of this, and I highly, highly recommend it. If there's a classic that you want to read and you're intimidated by classics, definitely pick this one up because it's easier to understand and entertaining the whole way through, and it's only about 200 pages long. Okay. The next book that I want to talk to you about, I finished recently, and it's called Creation Lake by Rachel Kushner. I have this really pretty hardcover edition that I got at a local independent bookstore, and I was first interested in this book because on the cover it says the Booker Prize shortlist and 2-time National Book Award finalist. And when I was talking to the person who works at the shop, they said that it's rare that one book will be on both of these lists. So that intrigued me, and the description about an American spy who infiltrates a French commune was also pretty interesting, and I thought that I would give it a try. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this book, and I think that the reviews are more mixed on Goodreads at least than what you would think based on the accolades that it has received. I thought that the premise sounded interesting. It's about an American spy who infiltrates a French commune, and it's kind of like a noir style telling. So it follows Sadie, which is not her real name, as she's traveling through the French countryside, about to connect with a group of leaders for this commune in France who is suspected of eco-terrorism, like destroying water towers and preventing industrial progress in the area. This is something that she does for a living and has done several times, bringing down eco-terrorist groups. But you can kind of see that what she's doing isn't totally on the up and up, because in America, where she did this before, she would be hired by the government at the government's instruction, purposely try to get groups of people to perform acts of eco-terrorism so that they could be caught and imprisoned. Really, it seems like what she was doing is protecting the government and the industrial complex. So it's a smartly written novel, and the way that it's narrated is from a very jaded point of view. Like, Sadie goes to the countryside of France, and she doesn't find it romantic. She feels like it's full of semi-trucks and metal and ugly things, like dirty underwear that are left on a branch at a rest stop that she goes to the bathroom. And so her view of people is pretty jaded. There's some trust issues that she has for sure, but she doesn't really go under the surface, and you never really throughout the whole novel feel like she has much of a connection to other people or a heart. She marries one of the people from this commune that she sees as like a rube, like a gullible type of person, and she stays at his cottage while she works with the people from the commune and tries to become one of them. But one thing that really draws her interest is one of the leaders that you never really get to see, and his name is Bruno. And Bruno is an older man who lost his younger daughter years ago, and he retreated further and further into solitude, and eventually into a cave on his property, where he saw cave drawings, and he started meditating about where people are headed, why we're so destructive, why we destroy the environment. And Sadie gets really interested in him because she can read his leaked emails to the rest of the commune. And he starts talking about possible solutions to our human condition. And one of them is to retreat into the past, like he does into the cave, and to learn from particularly the Neanderthal people of the past. She finds this very fascinating, and you don't really get to know exactly why she finds this so interesting. And the way the book ends kind of puts everything in a full circle. I would say it's a really contemplative type of story, and a lot of commentary on humanity and the darker aspects of humanity, and turning inward and learning from the past. I would give it about 3 stars because it was very okay to me and not that much more. I personally didn't see why it made both of these lists, and if I were to guess, I think it would probably be because those awards are made because of what's going on in our society and in our world and with humanity, and I think that this touches on those topics rather well and rather intelligently. But there was just a little bit more that I wanted from this, a little bit more in the way of human connection. It had that cold tone throughout. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I just felt like something was missing from the heart of this story. On to the books I'm currently reading. So I chose this next book because I have 3 shelves of books, and I've organized them loosely by category. starting with older classics, more modern classics, then going roughly by year into literary fiction. And then I have a few collections like some Penguin Black Spines and then Penguin Modern Classics down here. I have some poetry at the top, some memoirs, and some nonfiction over here at the bottom. Some books that I want to read my daughter when she gets a little bit older, and books that are like a mass market paperback that are from my collection when I was a teenager, and some fantasy, some sci-fi, horror, and mystery up at the top. And there's been a lot of times when I've been looking at my shelf and realized that there's a book that sticks out to me that I want to read and just never have gotten the time to do it, or never made the time to do it, or felt like it wasn't the right moment. And so what I did was I pulled out a book on each of those shelves that was kind of like a bucket list TBR book for that shelf. And I want to do a video showing the ones that I picked for that and more of the reasoning behind that. I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with wanting to collect books that you don't plan on reading for a while. There's a lot to say about consumerism and ways that it can get out of hand, but I think that that's really up to the individual person to decide, and I know that you can get a lot of joy from looking at books on your shelf and that they have value in that way as well. So we listen and we don't judge. And the picture of Dorian Gray was the first out of this kind of bucket list TBR collection that I have. I just kind of pulled out a book on each shelf, and like this is an example right here of Slaughterhouse-Five, which I'm gonna get to 2 shelves after this next book. I just think it's kind of a neat way to look at my shelf and be happy and know that I read something that I've been looking forward to reading, or that I'd be sad if I never got the chance to read. And Dorian Gray was the first one in that series because it was in the older classics. This next one is a modern classic, and it's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And I really like this edition. It's called the Penguin Orange Collection, and the cover is really cool. It's buttery feeling, and it has a little penguin on it, and it has the mop. If you've seen the movie, you kind of recognize certain elements of this, like the medication and then the nurse's hat up at the top, and then it kind of continues on the back here as well. Some of the things I recognize in some. The collection sort of seems like hand-picked books that are modern classics, and it says they are chosen because they are influential and they are from the breadth and diversity of the Penguin Classics library. There's 12 books in this series, and they're right here on the other back flap. The only other one I own is White Noise by Don DeLillo. And then they also have We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, On the Road, Jack Kerouac, The Call of Cthulhu, and Other Weird Stories, The Snow Leopard by Peter Matheson, The Crucible by Arthur Miller, 12 Years a Slave by Solomon Northrop, Ceremony by Leslie Marmon Silko, East of Eden by John Steinbeck, The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan, and The Broom of the System by David Foster Wallace. I like some of these authors a lot, like Shirley Jackson, Jack Kerouac, and David Foster Wallace. And there's other ones that I would like to read at some point, but I don't know that I necessarily want to own the whole collection, but definitely want to get at least 3 or 4 more of these. If you've seen the movie that this book is based off of, you will remember its very heartbreaking end. I'm a little scared to read this book because of that. There's also a very scary protagonist in this book named Nurse Ratched, and Ryan Murphy made a show based on that character that I didn't watch, but I saw previews for and made her absolutely even more horrifying. But I feel like this is a significant book that I want to read because it deals with a lot of topics that interest me, like mental health, and I feel like, based on what I've seen of the movie, that it's a commentary also on the way that we treat people in our society who are a little different, and the way that systems are set up against us. And I love those kind of books. Those are some of my favorite types of books to read. Some of the other ones I like of that same type of feeling are The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath and The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. So I think this will be something kind of similar. I've only read the first chapter, so I don't really have much to say about this one, but I will read it and let you know if there's any kind of like triggers that you might need to be aware of. And then hopefully you can watch the movie and cry when I'm done. I have two other newer books that I just wanted to show you real quick. One of them is Stephen King's The Shining, and I got this one from Barnes & Noble. I already own a paperback version of this book, but it's one of the ones that was in this collection that I had many, many years ago, and I have read this book. But I like the cover. I like how you can see the face behind the hotel, and I just think it's really cool cover art. So that's basically why I bought this edition. I enjoy a lot of Stephen King books, but I haven't read this one in maybe like 20 years, so I would really like to read this again and put it on the TBR for wintertime. And my mother-in-law and sister-in-law just went to Paris, which was a cool opportunity for both of them, and I'm so happy that they got to go. And they got me a couple things from the trip, so I wanted to share those as well because they're book related. They went to this bookstore that's really popular for book lovers in Paris, and it's called Shakespeare and Company. So they got me this beautiful tote that I've been wanting for a really long time. And it's just the same image on both sides, but I love it so much. And it made me want to go there more than ever. They also got me a little version of it, so there's a cute little drawstring pouch. And they got me a book from Shakespeare and Company also, and it's an older classic. It's The Hunchback of Notre Dame. You can see the cover's a little bit glossy on the lettering. It actually is a Shakespeare and Company edition, so that's really cool. I love the artwork on the front and the back. I'll just treasure this forever because they went to Paris and got it for me, and there's a little note that says, "Dearest Natalie, with love from Paris, XXOO," from my mother-in-law. So this is definitely one of the perks of having a book collection is people give you really, really thoughtful gifts like this. And I have never read this book, but I'm very interested in the story, and I'm literally looking forward to reading it. There's a little bookmark too from Shakespeare and Co. And it's got a little cat on the back. And it also has a little stamp from the bookstore on the inside. So super cool. Very excited about that one. And now I've been patient, you've been patient, so we're going to open up my Summerween books from Thrift Books. So I've always really liked a good ghost story. I think that maybe started when I was little, when Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark first got released and was at the library, and everybody checked it out, and there was a long wait list when you were in elementary school for that book. It was just something that was exciting at the time. And when I got a little bit older, I read a lot of Gothic tales like Frankenstein and Dracula, Wuthering Heights, and Melmoth the Wanderer. Those are all books that struck a certain tone with me. Just something about a haunted house or a ghost story that's romantic to me. And usually they have beautiful settings and there's a bit of a mystery to them that makes you want to keep reading. And I don't want to analyze it too much. It's just something that I've always been interested in. So I really want to grow my ghost stories collection. Right now I have a few, but I decided to pick up some more for Summerween. In July, I'm going to try to read several of these ghost stories and share these books with you. I'm going to open the first package. Awesome. And this has two books in it. The first one is Roald Dahl's Book of Ghost Stories. I didn't know Roald Dahl had a book of ghost stories, but I have always loved him as an author. He was one of my favorite authors growing up, and the BFG was one of my favorite books when I was little. So I feel like this will be a bit nostalgic reading. It says, "What we get from these ghost stories is a chill that makes us shiver and gives us goose flesh. Each of these stories is masterfully written, impeccable in structure. There's never too much of a good, truly disquieting thing." I think that about sums it up. This is going to be great reading for the hot summer days of July. Roald Dahl has such a really cool imagination that doesn't dumb things down for kids, and it just seems quite like him to make a book of ghost stories. The second book is Best Ghost Stories of J.S. Le Fanu. And this is the same author that wrote Carmilla. So I just got that book last year, and I've got to read all of it. I picked it up and then put it down, and I think it was just starting to be a different time of year, and I'm more of a mood reader, so I just didn't want to read it at the time. He lived around the mid-1800s. It says here, regarded as by many critics as the greatest master of the English ghost story. Carmilla is in here, as well as The Familiar, Green Tea, and otherwise unobtainable work. Half of these contents has never been appeared before in America. In many cases, the texts have been used for reprint throughout this volume, are better than those that have been generally available. So this is kind of special, just having a few things that weren't previously available by this author. Just some cozy ghost stories to curl up with and sip some lemonade. And there's two other books. One I think is another ghost book, and the other one is Oscar Wilde. So I'm going to tell you the ghost book first. And one thing that kind of bugs me about thrift books is sometimes they'll send you a different cover than the book that you requested in the cover that you requested. And that's what just happened here. But this is a book that I think is maybe like a middle grade. And the reason I got it is I've seen it when I looked for ghost story collections or good ghost story books. And it's called Wait Till Helen Comes. And I'll read you the back. It says, 12-year-old Molly and her 10-year-old brother Michael have never liked their younger stepsister Heather. Ever since their parents got married, she's made Molly and Michael's lives miserable. Now their parents have moved them all to the country to live in a house that used to be a church with a cemetery in the backyard. If that's not bad enough, Heather starts talking to a ghost named Helen and warning Molly and Michael that Helen is coming for them. Molly feels certain Heather is in some kind of danger, but every time she tries to help, Heather twists things around to get her into trouble. It seems as if things can't get any worse, but they do when Helen comes. Ooh. So I just looked this up, and it does say that it's for grade level 4 to 7, children's ages 9 to 12. So this might be a fun book for me to read to my daughter when she gets older, or even that I will enjoy and again make me feel a little bit nostalgic. Ghost stories can be light reading. I feel like they can be ways to enjoy horror without feeling overwhelmed or disgusted. I generally like horror, but I feel like sometimes it can be a bit too much for me, especially since I had a kid. I have a harder time stomaching certain things, so I like to still be able to get scary stories and enjoy spooky stuff, more on the spooky side, I guess, than so much the scary side. My threshold is getting smaller as I've gotten older, and because there's enough scary stuff in the world, that could also be a part of it, to be honest. And the last book I got has a sticker on it that's right over the title, so that's cool. But it's the Complete Fairy Tales of Oscar Wilde, so I will get this sticker off. It's kind of like an interesting cover with some mythical creature right here. And it's the Signet Classics. It's another one of those paperback, mass market paperback type books. I'm definitely interested in reading more from him after the Picture of Dorian Gray. And I have so many other books that I want to read that I thought that this would be a good way to get little snippets of his writing. It has some nice illustrations on the inside as well. And I would really just like to see his spin on this genre. And I feel like it would give me more of a well-rounded view of his writing. So here's the complete fairy tales of Oscar Wilde, and I'll squeeze this in somewhere really soon. So that is it. A little bit about me, the knitting half and the reading half, and how I'm not quite able to separate them, even though the main thing that I wanted to do with starting this channel is to be able to share my designs. I feel like I get so much joy out of reading and so much joy out of other little hobbies that I have that I want to be able to share that as well. If I'm going to have a whole channel, you'll no doubt let me know how that's working and if it's working the way that I envision. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like. I'm going to come back in probably a couple weeks and just show you the finished version of my own design, and have hopefully finished a couple more knitting projects and started a few more books that I can share with you also. And I hope that you're all doing well. I hope that this video just gave you a chance to sit back and relax and hear a little bit about knitting and reading. That's really the utmost goal that I have for this project. Just being able to share these little joys with other people is something that gives me a lot of meaning and well-being, and I hope that listening to it gave you that as well. Thank you again. I am looking forward to talking to you again really soon, and have a wonderful day.